Great to be here with you all this evening. Before we get rolling, I'm just going to ask a couple questions. Are there any students out there in the crowd this evening? Students, there's a question for you. Do you miss going to school? How about teachers? I'm a teacher. Teachers out there this evening, do you miss going to school? And last but not least, parents. Parents out there, do you miss your kids going to? I don't think I have to finish that question. All the parents are missing their kids going to school. I can pretty much guarantee that. But what are we missing? Students are still learning, right? Even though they're at home. Teachers are still teaching, although sometimes that's a little difficult at home because things have been a little bit more crowded lately in my apartment. Basically, what we're missing, though, is the social element. Online learning lacks the social space that students and teachers need for learning to occur. I've taught in 5 countries now, currently in Amsterdam, and there's a universal across all cultures, all age groups of students. Actually, there's 2 universals. The first one is students love to socialize. They love to be with their friends. Think about it. Even students that hate school still love the social aspect of school. The other thing that's a universal, well, students tend to like to take pictures of their teacher at their weakest moment. This is actually a real student picture. We were on a field trip and I got a little distracted about possibilities. Think about what a normal day looks like for students at school. From the minute they walk in the door, it's constant social interaction with their teachers, with their friends. Now contrast that with what a student goes through on a typical day of online learning. The prescribed content, or they have to practice skills at home, and they do that in isolation. That's a stark contrast. We're missing a lot of the great parts, the social interactions that students have on a day-to-day basis. Take discussions. Discussions are a vital tool that I use in my classroom that many teachers use, but that's really hard to translate into an online situation. I can remember back in 10th grade when I was studying Huckleberry Finn in English, we had such a mind-blowing, wonderful conversation in class that we actually brought that conversation after class was over with us to the next thing that we did, which was go to lunch. We left our friends at our tables and came together and continued learning, continued that discussion. So right now we're lacking those spaces. There's a couple ways that we can create those spaces though. First of all, students need daily interactions with other students. They need spoken interactions. Now, big video conferencing, it doesn't really work. I mean, think about your experiences with video conferencing. I can tell you when my family gets together, it's 20 Italian Americans on a Zoom at the same time. And well, let's just say we think we're taking turns speaking when 12 of us are talking at once. So it doesn't really work for the interaction that you need that'll simulate an online learning experience. So keep the group small, 4 or 5 kids at a time. Teachers won't always create this space. They haven't all figured it out yet. So if they're not doing it, parents should step up or students take charge and make smaller study groups. Another social place at school is lunch, right? Students aren't doing that anymore. They're not meeting. They're not having those informal conversations with their friends. That's really important to create that space for socialization. It helps kids decompress, process their learning. It helps them get through the day. Parents, give your kids some privacy. Think about it. In a real school day, how many times are you looking over their shoulder when they're at home? In reality, how many times can you ask your kid, how is their day going? Give them the space they need to have candid, real conversations with their friends at lunch. That'll help them to better utilize their time at home. The other thing we need to think about is how to better utilize the advantages of online learning while ejecting some social possibilities. For example, when students are at home learning online, oftentimes they should have opportunities to do experiential learning. What I mean by that is students should be able to do things where they're experiencing and therefore able to learn from those experiences. For example, making a recipe. But why don't we inject a social element to that? Why don't they video conference with their grandmother and tell them what they're doing, or other students? I actually wasn't too sure about this video. It's as cliche as you can get. It's literally a meatball making meatballs, but the organizer liked it, so I kept it in there. So finally, last tip, parents, relax. Think about it. When your kids are at school, they're not always doing work. Sometimes they're socializing. That's a vital part of the school day. So please step back. We all know that over-involved parents sometimes can create attachment issues in their kids when they're older that don't emerge until they're approaching middle age. So, society needs to think about how we implement online learning. Just because we're shifting towards an online experience doesn't mean that students should be shifting towards a more socially distant learning experience. Educators, parents, and students, we all need to be creative to mimic the real-world social spaces that are so vital to our students' learning. Thank you.